Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Digital Access Show. Last week we were talking to Mark Muscat and Illese Smithwick about their special project, which we sent them off on, which was basically Mark going on a holiday, but reporting back about accessibility, digital accessibility, what he found with traveling. So, Illese, Mark, we were talking about New Orleans and we just finished about the Blues and Jazz Festival, which you said was just a great experience. So, what about New Orleans itself, getting around New Orleans, doing what you wanted to do?
That's where we struggled. Well, that's where we got a lot of challenges, to be honest, in the French Quarter. And I'm specifically saying the French Quarter because it's very different there to the rest of New Orleans. The French Quarter is the touristy part. It's, the tradition, the history and everything is all in that area. And of course, the architecture of the buildings, etc., is just amazing. But the streets are not great for trying to navigate.
Oh,
I
what
found
type
myself,
of street? Cobblestone?
well, no, they were the concrete pavements, but often the concrete was broken. Right.
We're even the paths are certainly not even, and there was obviously a lot of people, and it meant that negotiating the paths and the actual crowds itself made it difficult or challenging in the sense, for somebody to guide in narrow spots as well. I think walking around with my cane on my own, it was challenging in the sense that you were finding yourself having to move not just around obstacles but around people, and it was just it was just part of the whole experience. So and it just meant that we had to take time out and just do things that would relax us. So
So you enjoyed New Orleans and the Blues Jazz Festival.
Absolutely.
And then from there, you went to Vancouver. Tell us about Vancouver and your experiences there with accessibility. Contrast, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say with New Orleans,
helicopter.
Yeah. Just to go back with New Orleans, we caught the public transport around. So there were trams and buses. The bus, they had accessible tickets that you can download on your phone. I think that was quite easy. You found that easy to download?
So the La Pass app was actually very nice to use. It's probably inaccessible standings. It's probably as good as something like Next There, which is quite a nice little app to use. I wouldn't. It was definitely better than our Queensland Translink app. But it certainly had all the information that you required. Interestingly, there wasn't real time sort of data on that app. We had to get that from.
There was real time data, but it was difficult to find.
Okay. Well, that was challenging for me to find. I pretty much relied on Google Maps for the real time stuff. To know when the buses were coming. They also got trams in New Orleans, which is actually they call cable cars, but to us here in Australia, trams. They felt like a tram. They pretty much were a tram, and but they were look, the whole operation was quite useful. And in Vancouver, we were only there for 2 days, but we certainly had extremely interesting experiences with the kiosks and so forth that they had. So we're at a cake shop, I believe. Was it a cake and coffee shop?
Coffee shop.
And the kiosk there, where you order your food, had accessibility.
Oh, wow.
It didn't work for us, but it was there, and the person, when we reported the fact that it wasn't actually talking to us, said that they'll get that looked at. But it was nice to know that it actually existed. So that was interesting. And the ATMs in both the US and Canada were obviously accessible. They had headphone jacks. They had the buttons that you could use to control the volume of the speech and all that sort of stuff. So that was all.
That's interesting. Very interesting. What a contrast to hear.
I know we got them here in Australia, but
Oh, okay.
it
I've
was
never found them.
yeah, it was interesting. I mean, again, like in Australia, if you wanted an accessible ATM, you needed to go to a bank. You couldn't use any of those third party ATMs that just they weren't accessible, which is rather sad. But the banks all had them, and I think the most interesting part, which we'll come to in Japan, was the fact that they would do different languages, which is obvious. But yeah, so
Vancouver was really good. You had you didn't have many troubles there with getting around trying to find what you wanted, Mark. And at least you could be just the partner.
Yeah. I think the streets were a lot more, after having been through New Orleans and feeling the frustration and the stress of trying to navigate the streets there, going to Vancouver was a real relief because the streets were wider. They were even paved. There was no worries. So I didn't feel like I was walking with my eyes down all the time to navigate. Yeah. We were actually able to walk around and look around. We caught public transport around. We caught the ferries. We went across, so their system, however, their public transport system was more ticket-based.
Yeah.
So I had to go for a walk to the local shop to pick up tickets.
Whilst I was washing the clothes. So
yeah.
That's good to know. Now, what about the cruise itself? The cruise ship, what was the accessibility? What was navigating that like? Illese, were you again able to be the partner and not the support person, the carer? All of those things.
The first day on the ship, Mark took advantage of a orientation.
Yeah.
So you can talk about that.
Yeah. So we travelled with Norwegian. So that was the first time for me on Norwegian. I don't know. That was first time for you too. Yeah. So we I've only been on P&O cruises, which is completely different. So this is the first time. Norwegian have an access team in their organisation, and pretty much there's a survey that you fill in. I was disappointed with their survey because it had all the questions. So there was questions about everything ranging from incontinence to vision impairment. Yeah. So it was like filling in an NDIS form. But the reality was that once you got through that, they'd send you back an email saying we acknowledge, and they thought I had a guide dog there for a while, and so they were chasing me up. Even when I was in America, they were chasing me up about my guide dog. And I said, look, I have no guide dog. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, that sort of made them quite relieved, because with having a guide dog, there was a whole lot of processes that we all know about. They said to me that they'll arrange the orientation, which happened, and it was actually done by one of their senior staff, who was, I've got to say, who was actually very well trained in orientation mobility. They knew all the key things to look for, landmarks, directions, that sort of stuff. So much to the point that I was telling other passengers which way to go through, casinos and all that to get to theatres and stuff like that. So ships are great for a blind person, because basically once you work out where things are, it's always the same. Nothing changes. So for me,
what about wayfinding? Was there wayfinding tools on the ship that you could use, or?
No, you don't need wayfinding tools as such. Just a good understanding of what port and starboard is, and what's the front and what's the back, and just really getting an idea of various landmarks on the ship, stairwells, lifts. All ships have what they call an atrium, which can throw people around a bit in terms of orientation. I didn't have a problem with this particular ship, which is the Spirit, by the way, for anyone's info. And no problems with that. I was able to, go up and down the stairs. I I preferred the stairs. The lifts didn't talk, so you didn't know what deck, didn't know what deck you were on. So I tended to use stairs on my own. I think when you and I travelled up and down the lifts I was with Louise, but most of the time I would just walk up and down the stairs. You got the usual sort of problems like the buffet type stuff that you'd normally find on any cruise, but
everyone has those issues anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not most staff are pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about when you were doing the excursions off the cruise? So for those that don't know, they went on Husky, traveling by Husky, you went to glaciers. What was the accessibility like with those things, Mark? Was it very different? Was it really considerate of people with disability?
I had no issues at all with the excursions. We planned them before, so that I think is the most important thing, because by planning it, we were able to tell them that that I was visually impaired.
Not that information always got through to the
no,
people
that was
who
interesting.
were running it.
It was the dog sled one was actually quite interesting. Oh, we weren't told, but they didn't seem to have any problem with it. They were just they were meant to be told, and they knew that should have happened, but it didn't, and that was more Norwegian's fault than anyone else's, because we booked it through Norwegian. And I think, but after we got through all that, was pretty much straightforward. It was, I mean, to the point where I was talking to one of the what do you call them? The one of the guides who do the sleds, and he was telling me, Masha, that's it. And it was having a good chat about the steering, and I had no problems with that at all. So accessibility wise, it was the other one that we did was the gold mine, and the train that went from Alaska up into Canada. That was quite interesting, and the person that we had was actually quite descriptive.
The tour guide was very good in her
very
and storytelling.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
she did a lot of that on the train ride up, which occupied our time and our thoughts, obviously.
No, excellent.
I think just going back to the ship, I was going to say the Spirit, and I can't speak for all ships, but they actually had all the lifts facing the same direction. So when you got out of the lift, you're always facing the back of the boat.
That's right.
And so you
That's
always
a good point.
turn right or left.
Or starboard.
And all the doors had braille on them as well, so you knew what number you could go through and feel.
Oh, okay.
You're up to.
That's good. P&O didn't do that from memory when I.
Well, the last one I was on P&O, the braille was actually falling off some of the signs.
Yeah.
I remember the cruise that I was on, I actually spent up half the day looking at their signs, telling them, pointing them back, which they gave me a nice free meal for. But
awesome.
But the thing is, no, the signage was actually quite decent, and they had signage on, not just the numbers of the rooms, but they also had it on the toilets, and they even had it on some of the other important, like the cafes and the doors for balcony, not the decks, the deck doors.
Fantastic. Hey, now Japan. Tell us about Japan.
Japan is the ultimate in accessibility. I've got to say, you can learn so much from the Japanese. After all, they invented the TGSIs that we all use around. They also invented the toilet harness for our guide dogs, but that's okay. The Japanese think through everything, and like in an open area, like some of the train stations are, like Southern Cross in Melbourne's the same. So I think Southern Cross should learn from the Victorian government should learn from the Japanese. They got rail trails everywhere. Just not a problem at all. But the thing that really got me is if you put your hands on the stair rails, there's braille at the beginning of at the top and the bottom of the stairs, whichever way you're looking
Oh
at it.
my God,
But
that
on
would
the
be
braille label,
awesome.
on the braille label, it has the platform that you're going up or coming down from.
Oh wow, that would be so awesome.
Just that simple thing of knowing which platform your stairs you're at the bottom of. I mean, you know, I don't understand why that's not an international thing, personally. But
a great little tip for anyone that's doing accessible signage and so.
Also underneath there was underneath those handrails there was Japanese braille. It's braille in Japanese.
Yeah.
But it also told you what line that was as well.
Yeah.
So the Yamanote line or the whatever train line you were going to. So
so Japan was fabulous then for you.
Oh yeah.
You were able to relax, be confident in being able to get around.
We definitely want to go back there. We're looking at Osaka or something next year. So yeah, look,
I found going through Tokyo Station is just chockers with people and it's hectic at the best of times. It was probably the first station where I actually pushed Mark in front because I got him to just follow the braille line or the lines on the ground.
Just the cane.
And as soon as people saw that cane, they just split like, Moses.
It was easier. So sighted guide worked, but it was just easier for me to go in front in some situations.
It was easier for an unsighted guide.
Yeah. It was just
the leap was dependent on you. Isn't that wonderful?
The other thing about Japan was again they're obviously technical as well, so there's a lot of stuff that I would have liked to explore a bit further, but we're only there for 2 days. So but there were kiosks, there were things like ATMs. I think that time you got the money out, there was even that the ability to even talk to a human bank teller, because there was a situation that Illese had to sort. That impressed me. So things like that I was actually quite fascinated by.
So and of course, there's braille on the toilet seats as well for the
on the toilet seats. Wow.
Well, on the remote control next to the toilet seat that runs the heated toilets or the bidet or whatever that you
So every toilet that I found in the accessible toilet, if you use the accessible toilet, even most of the toilets, they have bidets, and all the bidets have buttons for different operations. And they'll definitely be clearly brailled in Japanese, of course. But once you learn the braille for what you want, it's pretty straightforward. So
as a special project, it was well worth doing. You learned a lot.
Oh yeah.
I look, it was a very interesting group of experiences that we've had. It allowed me to give some thought to some things, it's obviously just lots of notes that I wrote, but it's just a whole lot of things that we can actually bring to the table when it comes to discussions about accessibility.
Wonderful.
In general,
So what's your takeaways? 2 takeaways, one from each of you about the whole experience.
Oh God. Takeaway. I think for me, traveling through the cruise side of it, it was certainly easier to go to the dining rooms with Mark rather than having to go through the buffet upstairs. That was my learning curve. But in saying that, I was very disappointed that even though the buffet menus repeated regularly, there were none available in Braille. So that would be my comment back to Norwegian too.
And they actually said that they had an embosser, but when I spoke to the lady, she said, "Oh no, we don't have anything of that on the ship," which is quite interesting. Obviously, they're aware of Braille and embossing Braille, but they probably should have been told, or they should have got that. And I'm hoping that they'll put that on their survey next time, that if you want Braille menus and so forth. I think the problem sometimes is when they're doing ship type schedules, that these menus often will get changed. So it's a case of making sure that you know, whoever plans that can get that information. It's just the usual, you know, publishing and getting things brailled. But yeah, I would have really appreciated. The app was awful. I've got to say, the app on board, once we were off open in the seas, it was useless. They had graphics for graphics for the menus, and yeah, and being because we're not, I didn't want to go and spend a lot of money just to get Wi-Fi. Thank you very much. I wasn't able to use artificial intelligence, you know, solutions. So yeah, therefore I had to sort of rely on Illese and other people to tell me what's available and or what was on during the day. That was the other feedback I needed to say. Take for me, I think for me the biggest take was that we've got a lot to learn in terms of accessibility. There's a lot more improvement. Sometimes it's easy to get complacent with what we've got, and you know, we need to start challenging ourselves, but not only need to challenge the people that make decisions in getting accessible things for us, because you know, without improvements, we will get left behind, and we've all been in that situation, and we're not out of that situation, so we could still, you know, still be suffering the same thing 5, 10 years, 15 years down the track from now. So that was a big take for me.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Illese, for coming back and telling us about the experiences. It's been really valuable, because obviously I love traveling as well, and just hearing about what you've experienced, what you've learned. So next year you will report back from Osaka, I'm presuming, and obviously this is the Digital Access Show. We hope you like what we're talking about and what we're doing. Please like, review, subscribe, share, Google review, take your pick, and we will see you next time on the Digital Access Show. Thanks, Mark and Illese.
Bye.
Bye.